Hey, this is Mike Diercksen from Proactive, and you're listening to the Building Byte podcast. Tune in as we spotlight our guest, Damien Caldwell, co-founder and CEO of ASG National. Our episode today is focused on Insurtech, helping to improve outcomes through proactive management. For more information on this episode and others, please check out the Building Byte at www.buildwithproactive.com.
Welcome to the Building Byte podcast, a podcast for construction contractors, owners, and insurance professionals where you'll hear from the experts about key topics to help you be successful. I'm Chris Epps, a vice president with Proactive, and I'm joined here with my co-host Mike Diercksen, our manager of marketing and business development. Our guest today, a thought leader in the construction insurance technology space, is Damien Caldwell. Damien is the co-founder and CEO of ASG National. Damien, how are you this morning?
Good morning, guys.
Mike, how about yourself?
Doing good, Chris. Excited to get this conversation going. Glad we got to meet Damien at a conference and really looking forward to this topic.
Absolutely. Again, Damien, thanks for joining us today. It's a real pleasure to connect with you and get to spend a little bit of time. Before we dive into our main topic, I wonder if you could tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your career and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. It's actually been kind of an interesting and oddly fun path for me anyway, if you're into it. You know, nobody wakes up and says, I'm getting into risk management or construction. They kind of just do it. So I keep saying about 20 years, but because I'm afraid to date myself, but it's actually about 25 years now, over 25 years. I started in a legal department doing like franchise indemnification and all kinds of fun stuff with contract reviews. And it was right out of college and I just needed something closer to home. And I stumbled into like an IME company, which was my entrance into the P&C world. So it was there for a few years, kind of lucky to have a good mentor, took me under her wing, taught me everything I need to know. And eventually I opened my own company with a great partner who sadly we lost to cancer, which afterwards I kind of just, lost my passion for that business and moved on and stepped my way into Corval, which was, we're all familiar with Corval. They're one of the largest TPAs now, but when I joined them, they were just managed care. So I learned pretty much everything about every other ancillary service on the market because it was easier to say what we didn't do with Corval than what they did do because the list was so long. And they were also a phenomenal technology company. Even back then, we're talking early 2000s and, even before then in the 90s, they had invested over $22 million into their tech at that time. So it was really while I was there is where I became an adjuster, got my broker's license, and helped them establish their TPA presence here in the Northeast. Matter of fact, I think it was me and the current RVP for that region that sold the first workers' comp program for them here in the Northeast, which was exciting. And their technology and their concepts around that kind of planted the seed for what today became ASG. So it was a great experience for me, probably one of my favorite places to have been if it doesn't come across, aside from owning my own. And then after that, I took a dive into healthcare. I was senior VP for operations for a company called Portec, and we did revenue cycle and practice management, and then also a company very strong in technology. So we had a lot of services for hospitals, providers, from everything from like eligibility and benefits verification to a program that I architected when the New York State Workers' Comp guidelines came out. We did authorization submissions for providers to build there and parse the guidelines so that they could review and understand they were looking at. So again, tech side, all feeding this idea of growing into, this thing that was planted in my head back then. And then after that, right before launching into ASG, I joined ExamWorks, which if you're not familiar, they are the largest ancillary service provider in the world. I ran the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic for them, for sales. And we controlled about 46% of the entire domestic revenue for them. So great opportunity. I had a massive team there. But, while I was there, I met my current partner and co-founder here. So I had originally started ASG with someone else who moved on, and then I met the brilliant man that is my partner. We took the company in a completely new direction from providing services to being a true technology solutions company, which is where we are today. And again, the point of going through that whole rigmarole is not so much it really gave us a unique perspective for me, having been in each of those areas and tying all that together.
Yeah.
So when we were building services and technologies here, that's kind of like we took one of those pieces from every spot that we've been at. We've seen the industry from all ends.
I was just going to say that, Damien. It's not like, I mean, you definitely got different exposure at different places, but it all kind of circles back and it leads us to where you are today. So it's a great wealth of knowledge and an experience really that you can draw on for the current findings. So that brings us to diving into our main topic for today is Insurtech and helping to improve the outcomes through proactive management. So I'm sure there are more than a few of our listeners out there kind of eager to get into this subject and discuss, kind of the things around it. So if you could, talk about, as a former claims professional yourself, what kind of drew you to this space? I mean, you mentioned the technology at a couple of your past stops and how you were kind of seeing that early adaptation. What drew you to that, and what were the challenges you were looking to alleviate?
Yeah, sure. So over the years, no matter where I was or, and what we saw and then people we were talking to, there were some reoccurring themes. It was a limited visibility to the data that they were using. They had limited control over or no control over what was transpiring on their programs, where they were being administered. And, the industry relies a lot on what I refer to as good faith compliance. So, they build SLAs and we hope that's what you do is you hope that your partners follow those SLAs. And there's penalties and stuff associated with, but that's retrospective after the fact. And there were no tools to really help enforce that. We noticed that data was everywhere. It was unorganized, and sometimes the data that they were collecting wasn't even useful for them. So, they have the bigger the company, the more systems they have. So you have, this system handles this, that system handles that. This program's with this TPA, that program's with that TPA. This is legacy. And then you get into their vendors, and I have 3 IME companies. I have 5 surveillance vendors that I like, and it just the list just went on and on. We had one client that we talked to that had literally the adjusters had 12 logins for all the vendors that they were using and managing a list of phone numbers, and it was organized chaos, let's call it.
Right.
And that was the world. And I saw that when I had a claims team, and then also, as I spoke to every person out there, this was what we were running into. Our first account, they had numerous facilities. They were in healthcare, and they had tons of programs, tons of legit facilities. They were managing multiple legacy programs in addition to their new programs. So assessment for them was a nightmare. And so one of the first questions that the risk manager had asked me was, "Can you pull all of this in one spot for me?" Right. And he's like, they were working off of 15 spreadsheets for all of their programs. And, some of them were 20 years old, but they still have open claims that they had to look at and manage. And all the data was different. So it was taking them a long time to assess all of everything they were reviewing. So, of course, our answer was yes. Our core system, the way we designed this, Asgard, is our core platform. And yes, because I'm a complete Marvel fanboy and my partner hates it, but I absolutely love it. And if I could name every piece of our system after a Marvel movie, I would. But the system's actually designed around providing our clients with a single pane of glass solution. So even our standalone products take that concept as the core of our operating. So that's really, we want to give them the ability to access whatever data they're working on in one spot.
Yeah, I mean it's also just great for name brand recognition, right? People can remember the Marvel things. I'm a big fan myself, but yeah, that's it sounds like a full-time job, Damien, just to manage those spreadsheets and everything there. So I could definitely understand why they would look for that.
Yeah, and so same thing. One of our biggest clients, we entered the door there because it was a CFO in construction that was like, look, if you can, it takes me a month to pull all of this data together. Literally when I'm looking at a program, if you can do this for me and make it easier, we'll talk. And we did. I'm like, if we can take that and make it for you in the touch of a button, then let's go. As long as the data is available, and that's what we talk about. They have the data, and every company has multiple systems, and we're not trying to be the system for everyone because you can't be the expert at everything. So we consider ourselves agnostic. We're Switzerland. And although we have independent systems that stand alone, like our RIMIS platform, it'll operate on its own, but we're okay with ingesting data from any source in almost any format and enabling them to view it, how they need it, not we're not going to show them, this is our format and this is how you need to look at data now. It's, no, how are you used to looking at it? What do you want to see? And that's our tagline. And it's always going to be is what you need when you need it. Because, these guys or women are used to looking at reports in a certain manner. They're used to ingesting data mentally in a certain format. So versus us saying, well, here's your new format, we say, give us your examples. So every implementation we do on any products for a report, we say, tell me how you want to see it. Moving data around, despite what the big shops will tell you, is not that complicated. So we try to make it easier for them. That is our entire goal of being is, we say alleviating the burden for claims professionals so that they can just make their lives a lot simpler and be proactive in managing their programs overall.
Yeah, it sounds great, Damien, and it sounds very dynamic and something that can be used across a wide swath of the industry. But you said, going back to one of your comments, you're like, it's not, it sounds like it's more customized. It's not just out of the box for everybody. But is there a target demographic that you guys are looking to work with, whether that's sophisticated owners and developers, looking at this as sort of a wrap program as a way to track and manage their own projects, or what's your target focus?
Yeah, so our target focus, I laugh, my joke is total market domination. It's everyone.
Hey, but that's a great goal.
But legitimately, it is, we're scalable. We pride ourselves on having built scalable solutions. So we actually have like 4 solutions that really work for just about anybody, depending on what they're doing. So, you have vendor optimization systems, which help them control, their vendors and those SLAs and rules that we talked about, RIMS platforms, which everyone's familiar with. But we do the tweaks and twists on there. We launched the ADR platform for, ADR, if you're not familiar with alternative dispute resolution out there, it's a big up and coming thing. And there are no systems out there currently. We're the only one on the market. We met with the stakeholders and said, what do we need to do? What can we help make your life easier? And we developed it. And then most recently, you just mentioned in the wrap world, we launched our wrap management platform this year. So from our perspective, we're open to the world, right? So, the beautiful part of the design is the scalability. So we can implement this for a sophisticated owner or a wrap administrator as a whole. Whether you're, a small brokerage or a big multi-billion-dollar one, the tools will work for you. So there's no difference for us on who's using it, because once we built the solution, it's just a matter of customizing for what they need. And we do our first looks at like ERMI a lot of times for the programs that we launch. So we had demos for brokers, developers, carriers, and even, I won't name the entities, but a few entities that are looking to get into CIP administration now. As they were coming along. And then while we were there, we also surprisingly had a lot of good conversations with GCs that are, they do a lot of work under CSIPs, and they're like, they want to really start controlling the program themselves instead of relying on outsourcing it to, a wrap administrator. So I'll talk about the wrap program for a second, because that's our new baby and it's a lot of fun. The technology for owners and GCs, which may not make some of the admins happy with me right now, but the reality is, it's actually a cost-effective means that would enable them to pull administration of their CIP programs in-house. So if you look at them, I'm talking to developers, the average client right now is paying, 1.5% to 2% of their CV to a company to administer their program. So like I said, before we launch, during development, we speak to all types of stakeholders. And the reality is there's a lot of gaps in administration today. I've seen examples, things that are just in there. So when we created some of the proprietary and customized solutions to close those gaps, working on that whole agnostic philosophy, we can connect them to meaningful data that they need and that they truly have a complete view of their programs. And that doesn't mean we're the everything, but we can tie in with their project management system. We can upload their schedules. We can tie that into the insurance requirements that they have for those. So you're touching on pieces that normally traditional wrap systems wouldn't. Site access and things like that. And then importantly for us is data, right? So being able to connect them to data and give them tools that will do things like tracking their aggregates. Well, that's one of those recurring themes across every system I've seen. Nobody does a good job at aggregate tracking. That's because they don't either have access to the data or they don't have the method to ingest that data fully. So like for us, we will ingest manual loss runs, or we connect with carriers, and we actually have a lot of carrier connectivity today. And you can use that, build it in, and get a real-time picture of what your aggregates are as you're running through the program.
David, I was just going to say, it's just reminded me of something that I would say all the time is technology is great when it works. And I feel like data is the same way, right? You can have all these data points, but unless you're streamlining it and using it in a useful manner, it's just data points at that point, right? So it's like, it's all about just getting everyone pulling in the same direction and utilizing that data the right way.
No, absolutely. And what you see are, especially on the metric side, I see all these reports and I'm like, okay, so what does that data do for you? And a lot of times I'm like, nothing really. Like, then why is it important to you?
Exactly.
And a lot of systems you'll see with, and not to knock them, I mean, again, I think technology is great in all of its uses, but I think people get distracted by the shiny coins, right? That's how I refer to it. So you have a dashboard with 1,500 metrics on it. I'm like, can you look at all of those at once? I'm like, it's no. I'm like, so they're important. Yes, the metrics might be important and you're using it in an appropriate way, but let's streamline it. Our philosophy on design is simple, simple sophistication. Let me give you a tool that you can pull up all of those metrics, but one at a time. Focus on the data you need. If you need something side by side, then we can display it for you side by side. But generally, you like to look at one piece of data there, one piece of element here, and then your key modules that you look at, like your aggregates, how many claims are here, how many contractors do I have open, who's enrolled, and all of those pieces that the standardized stuff, and we put it on the dashboard for them to look at. And then there's the industrial knowledge. So for us, when we build any platform, we don't like to go out and say, okay, we had a great idea. We were in the business. We know what we're doing. We don't. I don't do wrap management every day. I can't go out there and say, I'm the expert at this and this is what we do. I'm almost there after this, but we were fortunate enough to have a lot of relationships in the industry and stakeholders that we work with. And that's who gives us our feedback on and our concepts. They are the ones who do it every day. So I'm happy to hear like, hey, it'd be great if we could do this. So what we do is like, well, what would make you happy? What do you need? What's missing? And that's what we focus on building for them, because there was no point for us to go out in any of these areas, whether it's the RIMAS platform or the new wrap system, to go out there and launch something that already exists today. So you had to do something that was going to help make their lives a little better, a little easier. And we're big on the automation and we're big on the rules. So we'll take those requirements and business logics across the board, regardless of whatever platform it is. So what you rely on today as what I refer to as that good faith, we turn that into actual business logic. So there's rules in the system. So your SLAs, we'll convert each of them into a rule. And then, any technology can just tattletale. What we do is we take that design, and this is how you become proactive in it, is build in the warnings. So if you're, let's just use an IME because they're just very simple to a data point. Exam is received, I put in a referral here, it's supposed to be scheduled by here. If it's not done, notify someone. What's going on? Why isn't this happening? Because that's medical and that's time. If the appointment's held and you don't have results, in New York, you only have 10 days. So if it's not there by then, don't wait till day 10 to say, hey, this never came in. You have to say, hey, what's going on? Use that in the wrap world. You have your monthly submissions. Don't wait till the submission's due to say, hey, this is due. Say, hey, here's the information. Your submission is going to be due on this date. It's not due, it's not received. Hey, follow up. Hey, what's going on? You have this due and what's there. And then, you follow down the chain. And we customize that notification, and everyone who needs to be advised, you have to, that's custom for everyone, right? No one has the exactly same workflow, but you're notifying the admin, you're giving them a chance to get involved before it passes on. And that's where, industry knowledge comes in, and being blessed to have a lot of connectivity with this industry to this day is something that, we were fortunate. We say we're not just a tech company. We came as a group of insiders. So everyone at our organization came from the claims background. So I was a work comp guy with Corvell. My partner was an auto guy. Our developers all had claims backgrounds. They were building systems for claims companies or carriers or someone. So we all know that the workflow. So when we do something, we'll sit with a client and we don't just say like, oh yeah, is this, tell me what you want. Okay, we'll build it. That's your normal tech. Not thinking of what happens next. We'll sit there, we evaluate and say, okay, do you really need this? Or would this work for you better? Because, this workflow is going to impact the next 3 steps.
Right.
And a lot of times it's like, oh yeah, you know what, you're right. And that's kind of like how we've taken the whole perspective into helping clients become more proactive in using their data, analyzing the data. Because to your point, Mike, is, you can have all the data in the world. And if you don't do anything with it, it's not going to benefit you as a whole.
Right.
Yeah, and hearkening back to something you said earlier, Damon, it's like, what a novel concept of going to the market and saying, what do you need, when do you need it, and getting that feedback and then turning that into meaningful data and organizing that data in a way that's useful. Without giving away the secret sauce, kind of what was it in your background and experience, sort of being that market insider that made you think to add in the certificates and record keeping and the things that sort of make this a more proactive product to bring to market?
Yeah. So like I said, I've been blessed to have made a lot of strong relationships over the years across industries. So, in part from whether it's brokers or developers or actually admins, in part because of my experiences there and at different organizations, and also because I had great industry connections who were gracious enough to pay it forward, with introductions of their own. So they're like, oh, this is a great concept for you. Let me introduce you to so-and-so, and why don't we sit down and have lunch and talk about what you're doing? And that lunch leads to a offline discussion about, let me come in and help you. Show me when you build that. Show me what you're looking at. I'll tell you if it's hitting the mark. And things that seem so simple and realistic are really what's missing from a lot of them. But as a developer on an OSIP, how valuable is it to be able to track your aggregate during a project? And your project's coming to end. Where am I at? How much money am I going to be able to get back? Do you have any tools that can help me get back that money quicker? Because we all know, that money just sits at the carriers for a long time. So what can we do to help them improve that and shorten that timeline? And there are tools that can be done. And that's what the industry knowledge is, what we relied upon there. But even better, what's the value of a tool that can help you reduce claims exposures during a project? And those are the pieces that we looked at and pulled in. So let's see, without giving away all of the secret tools, but we built tools that can help them, get ahead of that game. So, right. and make sure that, if a claim isn't reported within a certain time, are they following up and do they have it? Where did that claim come from? And we checked with everyone. In complete honesty, the tools we designed to do those things aren't like I said, they're not my brainchild, but feedback from these experts. And then we take that feedback, because you can't rely on one person either. So, right. As grateful as I am for the feedback, you have to bounce that idea off others too and say, does this make sense to you too? Fortunately, we were blessed and she knows who she is. So I'm very grateful to this person who gave us a lot of insights. And everyone we bounced those insights off of was like, oh my God, yes, that's absolutely brilliant. You should do that. And it worked out. And those relationships kind of and those insights helped us to develop into these moves. Same thing, we started ADR started with a relationship I had with a president for PNC of MagnaCare. He helped us design and develop and put this together, conceptually what we should do. And then, they decided they didn't want to get into administration of it. So we took a pause. And then when ADR started taking off in New York, we were like, you know what? Let's launch this now. And we built it from that insight, from, the help that they provided there. And all those relationships, kind of led to me being part of a lot of industry organizations. So in 2017, I joined as a board member for Long Island Claims Association right when it was starting. And coincidentally, I did a presentation on proactive management there when it first started. And then I took over as president in 2019, which I've been since. And I've had the privilege of, overseeing this great organization with a truly phenomenal board. So when you look at our board, it's not it's not vendor heavy. It's not a lot of people. We're talking about people from Arch Insurance, Lockton, GB, ESIS, Safety National, and Allianz, and more. We had our board members that switched out. We had people from Acrisure. So it's all these beautiful powerhouse of resources that we sit down and we collaborate and we have great conversations that lead to ideas, that lead to development. And then when they're built, those same people are willing to say like, yeah, show me. And we share with them, and it's just been an amazing experience for us and how we've gotten to where we are today.
Yeah, Damien, I love hearing about this because throughout this whole process, the Building Byte journey we've been on, Chris and I doing all these conversations, the main through line, I would say, has been relationships and interpersonal relationships, right? Building your networking, talking to people, and the human connection in our industry. So you mentioned that claims group and how it's a powerhouse for you of ideas and experience. Is there something like, is there a specific stakeholder you're looking for that you're targeting, or are you guys just willing to talk to anyone to solicit feedback when you're trying to build out these programs?
Yeah, we literally will ask everyone who's impacted by the technology we're looking to implement. So like for Wrap Pro, we were, like I said, we were blessed to have a great industry resource, but we also went to vendors that might be impacted. They said, I was talking to, it was brokers and developers that started it, but by the end we were talking to GCs as well. How would you use this tool? Is this something that would be good for you? Talking to carriers, because we're talking about, hey, we want to implement a product that would help reduce claims. Would they accept the results of the tool that we were putting out there and use that data? And yeah, so we will literally speak to everyone to vet the concept, and then we'll build something out, we'll show them, and that's what we want to hear back. So we've used ERMI as our launch pad. Because I couldn't get a bigger audience in construction for that. And our last two systems have been very construction focused. So, and what we want to hear back from them is, A, do you find this useful? Because we do have ideas that we'll throw out there and build something and say, hey, this is great. And sometimes it does come back and say, yeah, I don't think I would really use that. Right. So, we want to know that, does it make sense? What do you think about, this workflow? Would this make your life easier? So my partner's the big workflow guy. He really can take a manual workflow and automate it and make people's lives so much simpler, but you want to make sure that workflow really makes sense. So we'll build it out. We'll show them that, hey, conceptually, does this work? And get their feedback. And, and then we ask again, what would you like to see? If you could have whatever it is you want, and you're not seeing it here, tell me, what would it be? And then we weigh it out. And from that, sometimes what one person wants just isn't realistic, or for us, as a company, we're still running a business, not marketable. But if they end up buying the tech in the end, we're happy to build them custom for whatever they want to use it for later, because maybe for them, it makes sense. And in their model, they want to use it. But once we've vetted the concepts and get the feedback on the wireframes, we'll launch the beta. And then we take that feedback after, like ERMI, we'll go back and make all the adjustments we need before we go to a real launch. So this time, ERMI was Wrap Pro, and we were pleasantly surprised. It was the first time ever that we launched the system, and the feedback was 100% positive. They were like, no, don't make any changes. This is what we like, which we never expected. Usually there's always something to come back and say, like, there's always something. This time it was, no, there was nothing. So we're very grateful to all the people, especially the, like I said, the ones that gave us that feedback. But even afterwards, we spent time with some carriers at ERMI that were reviewing it, and that really helped us with, like I said, the claims reduction tools on how they could, would you accept this if we had certain types of data to present to them that, there were no losses, will they accept that in that time frame? And the response was like, absolutely yes. Like, if you can verify that, then yeah, because that's always a big thing. That's one of the biggest problems we have in construction is claims that pop up after these subs have been off site for a long time and something pops up. Now, if it's legitimate, then great, you have it, but you got to give them the opportunity to report. And if you're missing reporting, it's the suspect ones that we're talking about that pop up 5 months later. And, oh yeah, no, I got hurt on your job. I'm like, but you haven't worked on a construction site in 5 months. I'm like, oh yeah, no, it was there. So, tools to help alleviate that are kind of like what we built in here.
Yeah, and that market feedback is so critical. I mean, it's great that you have those connections, Damien, such that you can go to the market and get that immediate feedback and be able to kind of tweak it instead of having to take this technology, build it all, and then go to market with it and hope it's well received. So it sounds very, very fortunate that you've got those great relationships out there, and that you're continuing to build those to entrench yourself in the market. Yeah,
and again, I can't say it enough that the industry connectivity understanding is really what helps set us apart. I'm super grateful to have that connectivity to them and to those who helped us do it, whether it was through Leica or recently we, as part of that group, we started our risk management group. So, and I can't take credit for the risk management group. That was the brainchild of one of my fellow board members on Leica. Her name's Kathy Alati. She's a broker at Lockton, and they approached her. Some of the risk managers had approached her and said, we would love to come to more of these meetings, but we don't like being solicited. He's like, I give out one card and I get 2 weeks of phone calls and it just takes up my time. So we can't, so we won't, they won't come, which is sad because it's a lot of valuable information that they would like to see. So she came to me and she was like, what can we do to help that? So we created, we got a bunch of them together. The same thing, everything's a collaboration. So we reached out to some of those risk managers and said, hey, can we get together and want to talk about an idea? Which was starting this risk management group, which is basically just a roundtable for them to come to, sit down, and share their thoughts, ideas, and what do they want? Focus on specific industry points, and they loved it, all of them. So again, giving them the control, because just like with what we do in tech, same thing for them. Explain to them that this is their group, what they'll run it, and they decide what the content's going to be, and that Leica, as the organization that I oversee, will support it 100%. So the board is all risk managers. They decide the content, and it's run by Carol Musamecki, who's a risk manager from Electner Hawkeye. She's the president. And again, another great board. I mean, you're talking about L&M Construction, E.W. Howell, Tully, Structure Tone. Those are all board members on that RMG group. And a matter of fact, where there's a board member now who's coming in for the first time from outside construction, that's going to be voted on soon from completely outside the industry. But again, he's outside the industry. But when we had the conversation about his desire to join the board, you're talking about people that bring ideas about cybersecurity, which big focus now on construction as well. All of those pieces that really tie together. So for me, it's important to give back to them as much as they've given to me. So it's just our overall philosophy. I've had great mentors throughout my life, and I've been taught that you have to pay it forward. So me being part of Leica, yes, it's great exposure, and I have access to a wonderful think tank. But on the same token, the goal for me being part of that group is to pay it forward, bring information to them that they can use and and bring back to their proverbial houses and make their programs better, which is also why, like for me, I decided I won't present there anymore because I just feel that it's too self-serving. So I'd rather be a benefit, nurture those relationships, and, have them just share in the growth.
Well, and kudos to you for sort of providing that protected space for them to, be able to exchange information and ideas and just really get that thought leadership connectivity out there that really kind of drives the market forward and ultimately helps all of us, particularly from a risk management perspective. Yeah. So, well, Damien, excellent discussion. We definitely appreciate your time today. On the show, we always like to leave our audience with 3 key takeaways from each episode. What do you think those should be for you? I can probably imagine based on our discussion, but what are the 3 big takeaways?
Yeah, I think the first one would be, we've talked about data a little bit, but take control of your data. Data is the new currency, which is why there are a lot of industry partners that may appear to be hesitant to share it. But if you're an employer, in the end, whether you're insured with first dollar coverage or you're self-insured, high deductible, whatever the program is, the end result is it's your data. They're your claims, they're your employees, and you have a right to access that. And as risk managers and GCs become more sophisticated, they're understanding the value of capturing that data. So whether it's supply costs, performance results, safety, claims, loss data, get it. But more importantly, you got to use it and put it together so that you can evaluate it and help make your program better, as you're looking forward to avoid, shortfalls and issues that you might find. Which would lead me to my second point of being proactive. So, we could literally do an entire session on how to be proactive, manage a program proactively. But I would say, evaluate yourself, and your program. take a step back, make sure that your focus is on being proactive. And if any effective risk manager will tell you that it's imperative in risk mitigation to be proactive. If you're always putting out fires or worried about what's happening now, it's what's urgent and not what's important, then you're not proactive. That's a reactive environment, and you're just always going to be putting out fires. So when I say take a step back, reevaluate, breathe, start being more thoughtful and analytical. You use the data that you have, identify patterns of failure, whether it's internal or a partner. It might be outside failures that you have to make decisions on. Create a corrective plan to get you to where you need to be, and more importantly, avoid that risk as you move forward. So if you're really starting to take a deep dive into data and patterns, then, we start talking about predictive analytics and mitigation, which is, again, a whole nother separate topic. But, it's really important. And it all starts there with the data that they're going to get, that first bullet point. And then last, and we're talking about tech, so, evaluate your tech needs. And I would say, I would love a client to come in and say, build me, the world, and I'll pay $1 gazillion for it. Wonderful. But the reality is you should crawl, walk, run. That is the term that, my partner has branded in my skull, and it's true. So whether your company is on board with investing in technology solutions or you're just getting into it, successful executions are going to require, a well laid out plan. So understand your needs versus your goals or your wants, and what you want in the technology, because everyone wants the Aston Martin, right? I want the awesome platform and it's going to do everything. But depending on where your budget is, and more importantly, where your approval authority falls, you might not be able to get the Aston Martin, but you can have a BMW. You can have a nice car. If you're going to go for something new, start with minimal viability. You evaluated your program, you see where you want to change, what tools, see what tools you need to help you get there. Forget about what you want to get to that first goal. Paula pointed out. What do I need to get the job done and improve efficiencies? Then look at what would be nice to have. If all that pans out, then you've demonstrated the value now in your offering, and hopefully getting approvals or spending them more money to now get you to that that Aston Martin works better, because you're going to build a chassis, you're going to have that platform all together, you're going to have those tools in place, and then you can add all the bells and whistles afterwards. I can't tell you how many times I've seen, talk to customers that have brought us in to look at our tech and find out that they've invested so much money in technology that, not that I'm looking to promote all my competitors, but actually does a lot of what they're asking us to do. And they're paying for all the bells and whistles and not using 70% of the system's capabilities. So it's really important that, you have a good evaluation of what your needs are, and then look at the tools to tie it together. And then and just how many tools you're looking at too when you're evaluating those programs. Because like we said, you see a lot where data's everywhere, and it's really hard to pull that all together. And that's, it's hard to be proactive when it takes you 30 days to pull together an effective tool to look at, because by the time you're done analyzing all of this, it's already into the next period. So, it's hard to be effective that way. So, and that's where we talk about that single pane of glass solution. So consider, going down that path of a tool where you can pull in, let the systems do what they do. The project management's there, claims is there, but pull it together into a house, and then that's where you can really start using that data to help you be proactive. And I want to say there was a CTO for a tech company that coined a phrase saying, you have to put your data to work for you. And it's true. That's really what needs to happen.
Yeah. And Damien, it almost feels like within that last answer, there was the answer to my next question. But, so you've got your takeaways, and then we always like to ask for an action item too, but it sounds like that crawl, walk, run mentality is probably right there, right? So if I'm a listener, if I'm an audience member, I'm thinking about this going, okay, where do I start? Is that the mentality to have, that crawl, walk, run?
Yeah, conduct a State of the Union, evaluate your program. And most of the time, when you take a step back and take a real objective look at it, you'll find areas where you can improve. And once you know what you're looking to do, once you know what you're doing now, then it's a lot easier to start planning on how to improve it. Set that goal, create an action plan, and then implement it. And if you look at your program and you don't know certain pieces of data, you don't know what's happening there, then that should be one of your big flags. And we know, listen, risk managers, especially regardless of you're at a GC or developer or your manager, it's a lot. There's a lot on their plate, and there's a lot of data that comes in front of them, and their priorities shift all the time. But there are certain elements that they should know and they should have access to easily. And if they don't, and you have to go searching for that, and it takes you time, and you have to reach it, then it can be improved. Yeah, is their point. So they should know on a construction program how their subs are performing. What's the bandwidth for those for those contractors that I'm pulling on. I'm a GC and I'm working with 700 different subs. Can they handle the jobs that I'm putting them on? Are they on other pieces? And I know, one of the things that we talked about was adding that into for pre-evals, pre-quals. What's their bandwidth? How many projects are they working on? That's a piece of data that's very important, because if you know that sub and they only have X amount of employees and they're working on X amount of jobs and you're looking to put them on 2 more, are they really going to be able to benefit you? So, all pieces that can tie in if you're collecting the data, and how easy would that be if I could say, oh, he's here, there, not for this job, but you know what? This guy's wide open, performed great for me. Let's add him on. And you can only get that by collecting data over time and building up that library to know those tools.
Well, great, Damien. Before we let you go, we always like to hit our guests with a few rapid-fire questions. So I'll start with the first one. What are some industry trends around your business that you're seeing right now?
So not just in construction, across the PC industry, PNC industry, there's tremendous push for data. Everyone wants it, but not every source is able to provide it. So depending on which side of the coin you're on, you're either preparing to collect it and analyze it and put it to use, or you're working on means to gather it so that you can provide it to the sources that want it. Or that's really where it comes down to. A lot of it, our industry is leaps and bounds behind where our sister or cousins in healthcare are. Healthcare has been way ahead of being on top of effective use of data. The volume of claims and things that they see is just so much more than us. And so they moved it well ahead, and they had government pushes to do so too. There were governmental reasons why, moving to EMR and things like that helped them advance. So, that's really what the big trend is. And if you, from a tech side, the other trend, the buzzword that you'll hear right now, which I'll tell everybody, is AI, right? So everybody's like, oh my God, this is AI, this, AI, that. Mm-hmm. But when you say AI has been around for a long time. The one that's effective for us. The buzz that everyone's talking about is generative AI. And that's where, your chat GPTs where you're typing in and it's doing this research for you. But that's not going to impact our industry for a long time. And in fact, I was just at the BizNow conference and they did a whole segment on how legal has written to all of their, all the departments telling them, do not put our information into any of these tools because people are using it to, check contract terms, to check this and, what do you think about that? But it's not secure. It's a big open world. So you're putting proprietary secure information into that environment. You can't do it. For us, AI, the tools that affect us now are basically machine learning. And that's really, what's out there. It's the business logic. It's the rules that are built in. That's also a method of AI. But the generative stuff will be a long time. But so right now the focus is data, and don't get distracted by the shiny coin.
Yeah. So, David, speaking of that, with our industry, construction, insurance, generally speaking, they're labeled as slow to adopt technology. So, where do you see our industry kind of struggling the most? But then maybe on the flip side, where do you see people succeeding with this? Who's excelling?
Yeah. So the big story you hit the head on hit the nail on the head there is that it is they're hesitant to adopt it. And mainly that struggle is leadership understanding the true ROI of technology investments. So, they look at that and I kind of put it down to 3 things. One is the fear of change. It ain't broke, don't fix it. We've been working on Excel for 25 years. Why do we need to move off of that? So that's one big issue that you run into at leadership. And you'll see that, the boots on the ground know the value because it helps impact their lives. It's when it escalates to the top that they're like, yeah, I just don't see it. Failure, and then again, that failure to understand ROI. So they're looking for, an immediate monetary return is usually what they're looking for. Okay, I'm going to invest $2 million now. It better make me $5 million by the end of next year. That's just not how it works. When you're investing in technology, you're looking at operational efficiencies, analytics, business intelligence, customer experiences, which will pay off for you in the long run and help you better service your clients. They're going to increase your productivity. And then, it's all of those tools together that will impact your ROI in the long run. I mean, they do pay out dividends, but it's not always a tangible number for them immediately. And that's where, that's a big obstacle. But you know what? We're not at the beginning of a digital transformation. We're actually in the middle of it. So it's a boat that if they miss, they're not going to be able to get on tomorrow because it's not going to be here. So, I say to those guys like that leadership, if they're thinking in those terms of, I just don't see the value and I just don't get it, ask Kodak how passing on digital photography worked out for them. Look at Toys R Us, who couldn't jump on board with, online sales. It didn't work out. The world's shifted, and you have to too if you want to be around and be valid tomorrow. As for who's succeeding, not just because they're my client, but because I have insight into their vision. Align is leading the charge on their willingness to invest in technology with an effective use of data overall. And I think you're going to see a lot for what they're doing. Actually, one of the things we're really proud to have been a part of that from the beginning with them, pulling in their data and consolidating it and normalizing it so that they can use it to better service their clients. So, I think they did a nice launch last year at RIMS with their new analytics, and then they're working on so much more. So they've really taken the bull by the horns. They're not afraid to jump in, and they recognize the value of it. So on the broker side, I got to say they're definitely leading the charge there. On the carrier side, I was just on a webinar yesterday, and our industry shepherd, is really taking the bull by the horns. It's no surprise, one of their co-founders is a techie, and, they understand insurance well. So at heart, they've been making big strides. And yesterday, they launched their Shepherd compliance tool, which was incredible. It was a really impressive tool to watch, doing COI, reviews, taking that from a process that takes hours to a process that's done in literally minutes, seconds. It pulled out everything they needed. It was very impressive to see. So, it's part of their culture, and that's what needs to happen for all the other carriers. They need to make that shift and make that part of their culture as well. And on the TPA side, it's a race on the construction TPAs right now of who's going to build the better widget at the moment. But strictly on the workers' comp end of it, if your workers' comp retail stuff, Corvell, like I said, they have been leading the charge in technology to the point that if I go to a prospect and they're with Corvell, I'm like, I'm not going to help you improve. You already have all your data together. It's great. I'm like, but yeah, they've really, they're not afraid of it, and they actually are not shy to continue to invest in building, newer and better mousetraps. So those are the guys that are really doing a great job out there. And I'll leave one out, construction, because I was impressed to learn myself. Suffolk Construction actually has their own IT company, which is amazing. I just learned that at the BizNow conference, and not BizNow, at the Build Expo. And I was so impressed at the tools that they're building for themselves. And it's a great example of what you can do if you recognize and understand the value of this technology for you. That they actually said, we're not relying on anyone else. We're doing it all ourselves. And they have it, which not necessarily the best thing for me personally, but it is truly, the way you need to go. I mean, that's the shift to the future.
Well, Damien, thank you so much. As you may have noticed, this is the Building Byte podcast. That stands for Building Insurance Technologies with the Experts. We always like to ask our guests, what are you taking a bite out of today? So I know you're in Long Island. Where's the good spot, man? Where am I going? Is it bagels? Like what's the number one thing?
Bagels all over Long Island. But for me, it is, I'm a foodie, and my favorite spot out here is in Syosset called Cafe Testarossa. So if you're ever down here, they're famous they have the best calamari you will ever have in your life. It is phenomenal. That and veal meatball sliders. It's this delicious soft meatball, veal meatball in between some focaccia bread. It is amazing. But there's not a bad meal you'll have there. They are phenomenal. So now I'm going to have to go there for dinner because now that's all I'm going to think about the rest of the day.
That's the danger in joining us, Damien. Well, thank you again for chatting with us today. If our listeners want to hook up with you afterward, where can they find you? Online, LinkedIn? Where's the best place to hook up with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place. My X handle is just DJ Caldwell 2, and online is ASGNational.com. So, yep, easy to find me.
Well, fantastic. Thank you again for taking the time to join us. Definitely love the conversation, and I think we'll have to get you on again for a future episode, see how things are progressing maybe next season.
Yeah, absolutely. Always happy to join on.
Great.
All
Thank
right.
you, Damien.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to The Building Bite. This podcast has been brought to you by Proactive. Check us out on thebuildingbite.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter and follow us on social media for all future The Building Bite news and updates. You can also find us on your favorite apps, including Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Amazon. If you have ideas for episode topics that we should cover on the show, or you know somebody who would be a perfect guest, let us know at connect@thebuildingbite.com.